Today is Monday, July the 19th, 5 o'clock. I'm calling the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation to order. This evening we have one absence. If you'll note it in the minutes, Bill Gossett is out, but we do have a quorum, so we'll go ahead and continue. First of all, are there any public comments? I don't believe there are. Let's move on to regular business and presentations. 3.1, approval of meeting minutes from the regular board meeting of June 21st, 2021, and special board meeting of June 30th, 2021.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously. Acceptance 3.2, acceptance of financial report provided by City of Bastrop's Chief Financial Officer for a period ending June 2021. I'll come to you, Sam, first, just in case there's anything you want to make note of.
No issues on those financials. I make a motion to accept.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Passes unanimously. Let's do 3.3, discussion and possible action on amending the amount of the Art Institute reimbursement, to BEDC for tenant improvements on 921. That's page 21 in your packet. Jean, you might want to come up and just briefly talk about this. This has to do with signage that was left out of $6,600. We had already approved the payment that was $200-some-odd thousand. So that has all been settled, but we did have this one outstanding matter that we wanted to clear up.
Yes, the original amount was $265, $213.40, and the Art Institute only used $1,500 of the original signage allowance, and so we just reduced that by $6,600 to collaborate those two items, which was $8,100 previously. So
Okay.
It's now $258, $613.40.
Okay, my understanding is that's been paid. Has it, Sam?
Yep.
All right, so really what I'm just looking for is the approval from the board to take care of that $6,600 that we had previously included but will not be part of that payment, which has been paid.
I make the motion to approve the new amount as stated by Jean, 258 something. 613.
I'll second that.
40 cents.
All right, for all those that approve? Anybody oppose? All right, that's passed unanimously. That's great to have that behind us. Thank you for all the work that went into fine-tuning that final amount. I know it took lots of conversations, lots of calculators, lots of fingers on the calculator, so thank you very much. We are actually going to be doing a budget workshop this evening, and so at this time we will go into a budget, kind of close down the open meeting here and go into a budget workshop. It's 5:04. The best thing for us to do is to hear from Trey Job, who is here, to go over the infrastructure items that the City Council is interested in us reviewing in our strategic planning session next week. He'll present those, and then we will go through the budget and talk about the different areas within the budget that we're familiar with, and then save the items that Mr. Job is going to present tonight to our strategic planning. But let's get all of our questions out of the way so that we'll be better prepared to have that conversation. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Trey. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for having me twice in 1 month. Let me present. That's hard to stay awake, I'm sure. So appreciate the time. Colin, can you pull up that item? Okay. I wasn't expecting to go so early. Usually I'm like
Colin, it's item 4.2.
Yeah. Here we go. So this is kind of a recap of what we talked about on the 12th, but not completely. So if you'll remember, there was one slide that talked about targeted infrastructure. And what I did was put some numbers to that. We have the Old Iron Bridge, which is about $12.7 million. We have the Recreation Center, / venue and related infrastructure. I changed that just a little bit from our last meeting, if you'll remember, because we had a conversation about some things that would be allowed to pay for.
Just one quick question. I didn't see any of this in our packet. Is this something else that is not in a packet, or is there a packet that I just didn't see the amounts? Because I want to
Yes.
get these amounts before I leave tonight.
I will give it to you, but it was not in your packet. No, this was not complete when your packet went out.
Okay,
But we will give you these amounts.
okay, I'll just flip it over.
So, again, we talked a little bit about the recreation center and venue, related infrastructure, how some things may be eligible, some things are not. And then we'll talk about what we think would have a current impact on the fiscal '22 budget. And that is a sports complex feasibility study, some downtown lighting, the Agnes Street extension. This is actually the 1% match, and then a broadband feasibility study, which I think everybody was expecting as well.
Trey, before you move on, if you don't mind, back up one slide. Can you just give us a really, really brief description of what you want to do with the old Iron Bridge? I mean, we talked a little bit about it, but if you'll
Sure.
just kind of refresh the memory, please.
Yeah, we'll actually have a whole slide on that if you want to,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
And
So-
just wait 1 minute till I finish getting this down.
Sure.
This is obviously fundamental to any of our discussions.
Sure.
So Trey, the Agnes Street extension is just the 1%.
Just the 1% match.
Now, as I recall, was that Monday? Yeah. You guys talked about adding another 2 lanes.
We did, and we'll talk about that too here in the future. And I'm actually working on another estimate for the southern piece of Agnes that's already built, from 304 to the current terminus. And that is something I think we'll have a conversation about later. Doesn't have to be right here tonight, but don't have that number just yet.
Okay, just to clarify, you're now going to go into a presentation on each one of these,
Yes,
correct?
ma'am.
Okay,
That's correct.
okay.
That is correct. Again, I just copied some of the slides from Mr. Zek. I didn't have near the colorful scheme he did, but I did use all his verbiage. Just, again, what I'll do is go through the slides that he presented at the last meeting and how I think they tie to these projects. You guys are clearly the experts along with Mr. Zek, but I'm trying to pair the two together so we have an understanding of how we think it works. Again, type B corporations, any projects related to the business enterprises that create or retain primary jobs, right? They create the sports venue upon an election, small city promotion, and new and expanded business enterprises, et cetera. Again, we talked about professional amateur sports, anything related to that, and also affordable housing, and we'll keep moving forward. This is that Agnes Street extension that we've talked about. This particular piece, if you'll remember, was funded and built by the BDC, I believe completed somewhere in the neighborhood of 2018, 2019 for the 2 northern lanes. The city's actually back and applied for a grant to complete the rest of the section, the gap that's missing, and that was for 4 lanes. So we have 2 lanes over here to your left, 4 lanes over here, and the match on the 4-lane piece that we are considering for the grant is the $43,000 that would impact fiscal year '22. The number I'm also working on is any improvements that may be needed to make these 2 match. It makes a lot more sense in my mind not to dead end into 2 lanes or 4 lanes into 2. And that's something we can have a discussion about.
This is the grant you received, $4.2 million to do this.
That's correct.
Were we named in that grant as a match of any sort? Was our name used in that grant? I know it was
No.
the first time when we did the grant. The second time around, was there a requirement that you had matching funds, and were we named?
There's you weren't named in the grant, but you were, yes, there's a 1% requirement. This is a hazardous mitigation fund. It was from Hurricane Harvey, and it was federal dollars, and it was just a 1% match. It was a really great deal. And our
Yeah.
request is that you fund that match of the 1%.
But you did not identify anybody for that match in that grant?
Nope, just eligible funds.
It's Bastrop, so we're all Bastrop, so it can come from any source, but the organization of the city of Bastrop has an obligation of a 1% match.
Correct.
Now, Trey, I know you're still working on what the 2 lanes would cost, but would it be, most of the dirt work and stuff was done, right, to create a four-lane highway on the part that EDC created?
There's some right-of-way acquisition that would probably need to happen, and then there's base prep work. All the utilities are already installed, but you're right, a lot of the work is already done. A lot of the drainage work has already been done. The water and the sewer have been completed. What it needs is pavement, base, and some light engineering. I
And the
would say, but,
4.2 for the other extension, that includes water, wastewater, utilities in the 4.2, or is that just the road?
It does not. So I would want to look at the project as a whole later, if we can talk about that. The 43,000 is just funding the pavement, the street lighting, the sidewalks, and the drainage work associated with this. Utilities would need to be paid for in a different fund. But that is the 4.2 with what you see.
I'm just trying to get a sense, maybe
Right.
2 million for the
For the utility
other
work?
2 lanes?
Probably. It's probably close. 1.5, 1.8, I think. Utilities probably, if we did something in this section, 600,000 to 700,000 if I had to guess.
Trey, I have a quick question.
Sure.
And those of us in construction know that the more you do at one time, the better price you're going to get. Would the grant preclude us from bidding the 4 lanes with the 2-lane extension to try to get the best possible price? Can we?
That presentation was really good. It's
Alrighty.
coming back. It's coming back.
I don't think it would,
Sometimes you can do that through scope, you
Sure.
can get them to divide it, but I'm just wanting to make sure that that we do something that gets us the cheapest possible, the most cost-effective.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going.
cost-effective
no, you're absolutely right. There's a cost benefit to bidding it all at one time. I will tell you that there was quite a bit of funding I put in for property acquisition just in case, but before we applied for the grant, we actually received a letter from both the property owners saying that if we would build the road, they would give us the land, dedicate the right-of-way, so we're working on that now. There is some wiggle room, I think, in that grant application based on that. And what I would encourage us to do is go back and see if we can expand the scope. And I seriously don't see an issue with that, because I think it's better for the transportation. But we would have to ask. But currently, this is what you see, and that's the project limits that we applied for in the grant.
So let me ask you a question, Trey.
Sure.
How long is that extension? Is it 1 mile, 1.5 miles?
I believe it's about 1,900 feet.
Okay, so we've already got 2 lanes already built. And that's the one that we did earlier for the hospital and all that.
Correct.
So if we're talking 1,900 feet, I'm just curious here, why would we need 4 lanes for 1,900 feet versus just have 2 lanes and have it all the same? You wouldn't be spending the total amount of money, but do we really need 4 lanes for 1,900 feet? And maybe one of the answers is because the types of businesses that you're going to try to attract to go over there?
Sure, I think
don't
this is designated a multimodal roadway on our master transportation plan. That's an 80-foot cross-section, 4 lanes. We were trying to replicate that cross-section. The end that's already been built was intended to be in original 4 lanes. Just the top 2 were built, and I would agree.
I remember
I think
that.
you can use it.
I remember that discussion with Sean, that they were talking, the whole plan was 4 lanes all the way across.
Right, and again, I think it would be wise of all of us to look at that as a complete connection from both this gap and the other southern 2 lanes and see what makes sense.
Is the 4.2 million for 4 lanes?
It is,
Okay. We'd have to get the other. Yeah.
but just for this section, that's correct.
Well, that's going to be a heavily used roadway, I would think.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
And what's the timeline for the grant?
Well, you have to spend it within 3 years. The engineers are starting their design. We've got to execute a contract with them. I would imagine we're end of '22, early '23 before you start anything. Couple of years.
Okay.
But it's going to take that long to get engineering, design. We've got to sign a contract with the GLO, which I think we'll see that happen in August. But it's a lot of paperwork. It's a federal grant, so it takes a little time to get through the paperwork.
Can you build it in a year? You only have 1 year left if it takes you 2 years to
I think you can.
plan. And will 4.2 cover the cost?
Yes.
Is there any leftover?
There may be, and that's why I'd like to see what it takes for the other southern 2 lanes and see if we expand the scope, because to me it makes more sense.
So Chairman Nash, what he's saying is the 4.2 million included some right-of-way acquisition, and now with letters, once those are executed, there's potentially funds that are left. And so a way, wow, I lost it again. A way to do that, to take care of those extra funds, because you don't ever want to leave extra funds in a grant, is if we're able to say, hey, it's the rest of Agnes, then those funds could go towards the 2 lanes, is what they're hoping to do.
That's correct. At minimum, we're asking for the 43,000 for the match with the grant we currently have. As the numbers get better, I know you have a strategic meeting coming up, I think it's an opportunity for us to collaborate here and make something that can be much better against the entire cross-section. And it's just something to think about as you continue to move forward. And what you set tonight or here in the future can be adjusted slightly, right? We do budget adjustments all the time, but what I'd really like to do is start getting in the mindset of thinking about this as one whole project, and I do think it will enhance the area quite a bit.
To me, that's like a critical road for Bastrop to survive.
And again,
That's why the GLO agreed with you, that's why they funded the grant.
It
And
was the top scoring grant.
From an economic development standpoint, there's a lot of interest and questions about projects along that road, so.
There are, and as you know, quite a bit of this is already zoned commercial around it. It's also zoned appropriately for apartments, which could meet your affordable housing need. But I do think something like this meets your type B projects related to business enterprises, and obviously they're going to create jobs, any business that comes in this area. So I think it's an easy win. The downtown lighting. The scope of the work includes uplighting the trees in the downtown year-round, and it also it's outlining the buildings on Main Street. I do believe that, what you're selling overall, you talked about this as one of your strategic goals, is the opportunity to strengthen the product. And anything that you can do to Bastrop to make it bigger and better, I think is good for everybody as a whole. Main Street's kind of the soul of the community, if you will. And I think the projects related to the business enterprises that create, or you could even retain primary jobs. The longer you stay, the more you want to shop, the busier they are, the more people are going to work downtown. And it's also small city promotion of a new and expanded business enterprise. Again, I think it's a good opportunity to strengthen the product. And this is just an example of what it could look like.
You don't have to tear up the sidewalks, do you?
We do not. So as a matter of fact, we knew we wanted to light these and we
Chairman
put
Nash,
conduit
would
in.
you ask Commissioner Kier to not ask mean questions, please?
We actually installed conduit while we did this as a change order to make sure that we were ready for this when it was time. So there's irrigation, there's conduit. All we need now is to pull the wire in and add some lights.
So it'll look like Christmas 365 days a year?
Well, the buildings can be outlined and the streets will be uplit. So they won't be lit with Christmas lights, but it will give a nice feel to downtown, right? Something comfortable.
Just need to get
Sure.
those businesses, all of them, to stay open to appreciate the lighting at night and people to go into them.
And it's also good for security reasons as well. So, I mean, it's a good,
Yeah.
I think there's an opportunity again, like it did enhance downtown. I really do.
And that's just a one-time deal, and that can be done overnight. And,
One time.
yeah.
Well, it's a one-time deal, but yes, it may take more than one night. The broadband and the fiber optic cable feasibility study, this is something that we've done together in the past. I do believe it meets all of your primary goals for funding. And it's a great business opportunity, right? We know that it's infrastructure just like water and sewer is these days. You need internet and broadband just as much as you do a water line, just about. So it's truly important. I think it's a great one. It's $50,000 to start the feasibility study. And there's going to be a real need for technology in the future, continued technology. The sports complex feasibility study, this was actually talked about in your Garner report. Again, it's just the feasibility study. This may determine what happens, what recreation looks like in this area. I actually dropped off for each one of you the 2018 National Recreation and Parks Association study, which they talked about recreation and parks and how they really enhance economic development, the jobs that are spurred from those. It's pretty impressive. There's about 14 case studies in there you may want to review If you're not doing anything, just a little extra reading. And it'll tell you why it's important to the community.
Do you have an idea of approximately how much acreage would be needing for something like that?
Well, I think that's what they're going to determine so we've had some folks say 75, we've had some folks say 300. So I think these guys will really be bigger. This portion that you're actually adding will overall be just a portion or a small amount, 50,000 of the overall Parks Master Plan and the entire thing. So you'd be funding this sports complex feasibility study. But we'd be looking at the community as a whole with the same consultant, more than likely. This could be a sub-consultant that does specific sports complexes. Again, an opportunity, I think, to strengthen the product. The recreation center and venue and related infrastructure, again, I don't know that all of this is for be funded, but there are certain components that could be. We talked about that. I do think it meets your small city promotion of new and expanded business. There's really some great numbers in there about recreation as a whole. You know, the state park, the YMCAs, all of those people that provide recreation and the economic driver. That's really what's in this report. It talks about the job creation and how much they generate in sales tax. It's pretty interesting. So I'd encourage you to look at that. Again, I think it's something related, to what a 4B fund can be applied to. Again, this is something that would not impact your budget in fiscal year 22, but we're going to talk about just thinking about things in the future. This is not close enough for consumption yet. I think we still need to have some meetings after that Parks Master Plan is done. We'll have a better understanding. Again, I talked about the NRPA report in there. I told you the key findings. High quality parks and recreation, it plays a pivotal role in attracting and retaining quality jobs, along with schools and other great things. But this is a big driver. If it's a great place to live, people want to come here to work as well. And companies look for the exact same thing. The Old Iron Bridge. So there is a 2-year-old estimate on the Old Iron Bridge. It's about $2.7 million. I'm sorry, $12.75 million. Big difference there. I forgot the one. And we currently have a pending grant application with TxDOT's Transportation Alternatives Grant. There's a 20% match required to that. We are also looking at using development credits. So what I don't have is a hard number here. I do know what the match would be, but also know that there's a certain amount of transportation development credits that are left over and that can be used as part of that match. So the limit is, or how you're limited, is if your particular area, your city, your area has a certain amount of transportation development credits allocated. And if there's 4 million, for example, and we get 3 million for this, I need somewhere to find the other million that's missing for the project. So that would be our contribution to the match. Some of it can be in kind, some of it can be additional funding. This may be a future, I imagine this will be a future bond issuance of some sort. We're continuing to seek funding through the federal, state, and local resources. Currently, I've been talking to the MPO, and we're looking at actually revising the transportation improvement plan. There's an application for that due this August. We will put the bridge on there. And again, this would not have a budget impact in '22. But I will say that this bridge, again, can be used for lots of events, right? If you'll recall the Small Business Revolution, that was an example of where the bridge was used for an event and it promoted small business. In the comp plan, what you see there is a sketch, and it actually talks about the river loop there. And the repair of this bridge was always in the comprehensive plan as part of the river loop project. So again, that's something that was funded to the city and the BDC together. I think there's an opportunity to do that together again. Exactly how that's broken out, I don't know yet, but I do know that I do think it's something that's great for the community and we should continue to work towards. This is how I believe it relates to any Type B revenues that can be used. It's that small city promotion. Tourism, entertainment facilities. There's been a number of Super Bowl commercials shot on that bridge, Toyota commercials shot on that bridge. And it's really about a sense of place and a good place to live, right? And that means something, and that makes people want to come here. We are attractive for that reason. And on your right there is just a picture of the Table in Maine, I can't remember exactly which year, but that's also an example of an event that could be held on the bridge at some point. And just do some more community strengthening. Again, I think it's an opportunity to,
So you are
strengthen the
tying this
product.
back to events, and that would be kind of a fundamental in order for it to qualify. So is there like a percentage of how often you use it for events that something like that has to be met in order for it not to be scrutinized as not applicable? I mean, how do they measure that? I would say the day they went out there and held the signs was not an event. Sitting there for dinner could be an event.
sure. I will tell you, let me go back to some of the original slides. I think that is a Mr. Zek question, the percentage necessarily. But I will say it's anything that. He's about to speak. Oh, go ahead.
Can y'all, yeah, y'all can hear me. Look, so I'm gonna repeat what I tell everybody all the time. I don't get to tell you whether or not something meets the requirements of the statute. I mean, if it is really, well, the law says it must promote new or expanded business enterprises. I have always interpreted that to mean you are going to help create new or expanded business enterprises with the project. You have to do the analysis as the body to make the decision as to whether or not any of the projects being described in this presentation meet the statutory requirements with respect to whether or not it's an appropriate expenditure with the use of these tax dollars. Y'all have to make that decision. I don't get to make that decision for you, as much as I'm sure you'd love to just have me make that decision. Y'all make the big bucks. The statute says, as determined by the board, not as determined by the board's lawyer. I will do my best to let you know where I think the parameters lie, but this provisions have always been interpreted by AG opinions and things of that nature. It basically says it has to promote newer expanded business enterprises. You have to expect to get newer expanded business enterprises out of your expenditures, or at least assist with it. But then they also go on to say, but it's the board who makes those decisions in the first instance, as long as they're not arbitrary and capricious. So y'all get to make these decisions.
Yes, and so the new and expanded business opportunities don't need to be named specifically. They just need to be reasonably anticipated. Would that be?
Well, that's for y'all to decide, right? The courts, the cases, which there are not many of, if any, on these issues, aren't going to give you a lot of guidance with respect to, I'm going to tell you it's not arbitrary and capricious. And I would also say that there's a spectrum, right? It might, it could, it will, right? And where it lies on that spectrum with respect to the best use of these dollars is why you were appointed to make those decisions.
Is there something about infrastructure or not?
There is, but that infrastructure must promote new or expanded
Okay, so it
businesses.
still goes back to that.
Same thing. Mhm.
So like Agnes, for me, that's a slam dunk.
Yeah, I mean, unless it's zoned residential, right? Because then it's not going to promote new or expanded business enterprises, because putting a new road through a residential neighborhood won't do that.
Right. But if it's commercial.
But if it's
all around
commercial zone, yeah, I mean, that's a pretty straightforward, streets, utilities that are going into commercially zoned areas, those where they don't currently exist, or where if the road isn't built, the commercial won't come. Those types of things are usually pretty straightforward. But
And
yeah.
can tourism be a business?
No.
Okay. Good to know.
So this is, again.
It's a tough one.
Yeah,
The
that's-
bridge is a real tough one.
Yep.
That's going to be hard. What about the fact that if they don't do something, could we fund a piece of the repair to avoid contamination of the river? Is that anything within the EDC that rules that we could do?
Defensive spending.
Yeah.
He's going to say the same thing.
I'm gonna go.
Say the same thing.
I'm gonna go back to my original statement.
It has to do with business.
It has, yes. Well, every project is different, right? So, with Type B corporations that are incorporated by municipalities that are less than 20,000 in population. The most common project is under 552, or 505, I think it's 158, and it says promotes new or expanded business, which is a broad statement. And so y'all get to decide. Look, you know, the big one that everybody, all the economic development directors and everybody brings up is Hutto Hippo. Will the Hutto Hippo, if you put a giant hippo out in front of, on the highway coming into Hutto, will that promote, and the AG said, it's up to the board to decide, will that promote new or expanded business enterprises? And then they get to make that decision. Now, I thought that issue was actually before the promotional expenditures became very clear. So, I mean, I think it'd be promotional, but that's the question you have to ask yourself. Will this expenditure promote new or expanded business development enterprises? And the more direct, the safer you are. The less direct, the less safe you are with respect to the legal nature of the expenditure.
So when we have businesses that have the bridge in their logo, the bridge in their name, there are some folks that I think their business would absolutely be impacted if that bridge was to not be here tomorrow morning.
Well, yeah.
So, but at the end.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, if you Google Bastrop, the bridge shows up over 124 times, right? In images everywhere. It's part of the overall product, which is Bastrop. The bridge,
That's the
river.
past of Bastrop that comes forward.
Honestly,
And I made a kind of, off-the-cuff comment last Monday, is, to me, I think it would be a better use if you had Elon Musk come in and replace the bridge
Right.
with a boring tunnel.
right, and you don't mean boring, like
The
not
boring
off. Yeah,
company.
I mean boring
tunnel.
under the river, gotcha. So,
That would bring people to Bastrop.
but do you know, if you read the history on the bridge, when this was built, that's what changed commerce in Bastrop. It was two separate economies until that bridge connected the two. I think that started as an economic driver. I think it still can be considered one.
Use it as a connector, we can get across.
Well, it would open up pedestrian, bicycling traffic.
I also think it has an opportunity to move those electric taxis across the river, which you currently can't do because the speed limit's over 45 miles an hour. It's a multi-mode of transportation. It continues to connect people. Again, it's something you're gonna have to figure out in your heart.
Maybe
but-
something you could consider in your thought process is, could businesses be on that bridge?
I think so.
Could you build it so that you could have food trucks or restaurants or, and make it something that people want to go to
Sure.
instead of just something to look at from neighbors?
There's been discussions of
All of that.
pop-up tents, pop-up businesses, farmers market, kind of activities.
Like, I can't remember that town or that bridge in Italy where, you just kind of walk through and you see all the, they're permanent vendors there.
And part of that, quite frankly, the 12.7 million, it was not at that price, you don't get back to driving semi-trucks across that, right? Like, I mean, you have to have structural integrity, which is what we're lacking, which is why the bridge is closed. But depending on ultimately how you want to use the bridge, that can impact the cost of redoing the bridge. But there was already a discussion of, planters, that's a static load that can be kind of intense, planters, with plants and water to support it and that kind of thing, and make it more of an extended park that has an economic portion of it. But it's all good questions, and the great news is we don't have to decide tonight.
That's correct. Again, this is not an impact to now, or to the current budget. What I wanted to leave here with is, one, the items that will impact the budget. But two, as you go into your strategic meeting, let's talk about budgeting funds now to be allocated later, something of that nature. Some kind of capital project fund, whatever you want to call it. We do something similar in our capital project. We allocate a certain amount of money for water line replacement, street expansion, or oversizing a pipe, for example. So if there's an opportunity to partner with a developer, and he's gonna put a 12-inch line in, but I need a 16, I keep funds available just for that. And I think that's how you should look at it. It's just, there are certain projects that are important. Let's put some funds aside and plan on, how we're gonna do that. And again, that's what your strategic meeting's gonna be about. So we get to work all that out.
And that was 2 years ago, you said that you got the quote for 12.7? Is that two?
That one's actually a little more current, but it doesn't include the engineering. But yes, 2 years ago, we had a grant for, we had a grant. We had for 12 million, a cost estimate for 12 million.
And Mr. Job, you said some acronyms that not everyone's familiar with. So the MPO, ours is CAMPO. It's the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. And you guys may be looking at me as mayor like, aren't you trying to get us some grants? So we are working through the MPO. I've already talked to McCall's office and Cornyn's office, but part of getting federal funds, you have to be on certain lists. So Mr. Job and Mr. Hoffman have made sure that we're getting that project listed on the critical list so we can possibly use the transportation alternative. So I don't want anyone to think that Mr. Joe bringing this up as a potential project means that we've given up and that we're not actively pursuing every possible avenue of funding through both state and federal levels. So I just want to put that out there. He quickly said MPO. I want everyone to know that's CAMPO. Mayor Pro Tem Nelson serves on that board. We're doing everything we can to try to locate and identify those funds.
And I didn't talk about it a lot because it is a lot of acronyms and it's a lot of planning speak. And basically, the TxDOT Transportation Alternatives is a small amount for small cities. The MPO has more federal dollars for bigger projects. And a lot of that has to be tied to what they call a CSJ number. And when you get that CSJ number, much like the River Loop has a CSJ number, now you're eligible for funding on the Transportation Improvement Plan or something like that, or even the Regional Transportation Plan. But until you get that number, which I'm hoping to get from this application, that I can amend the TIP, which is a Transportation Improvement Plan, I can start seeking federal funding, and that's where the real money's at. And it's truly, that $12 million sounds like a lot, and it is to a community this size, but in that federal and state funding, it's just. I mean, it truly is, it truly is what falls off the table. So, and they really like the idea because, again, you don't know this, but I'm working on this as well. With the MPO, they're gonna do, it's coined Platinum Planning when they did it in San Marcos. It will have a different name here, but they're gonna look at the entire Loop 150 corridor and do that as a study, and that bridge will be part of that. And again, I think that helps us seek funding later. It's really a pretty unique and cool process. It'll talk about how downtown and the rest of Bastrop will develop all the way across Loop 150 for the next 50 years, right? And it'll suggest improvements based on that. It will also fund it, especially if we take it off system. So I think there's an opportunity, and they really like projects that you take off system. And what that means is, if they'll do some nice repair and give Chestnut a facelift all the way down Loop 150, the city would take it over and maintain it at the end of that. And those are the kind of projects that they're looking for all the time, because they don't want that burden of continual maintenance. And so I think we really have a good shot. And again, the MPO has decided to do the study in-house for us. So it's a pretty good deal. No charge. So with that, I'll take any more questions.
No, I think, anybody else have questions? I mean, we're gonna be, digging in deep, on our strategic plan. Had to have this information before
No, that's right. And we'll send you a
we did
copy of this.
that.
We can do
Okay.
that.
Anyone? Okay, we're good to go. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so at this time, we have that information. We don't need to discuss that information, but we all have a budget. We have 2019 to look at, if you need to see what it was before we got into 2020, 2021, and then we have the forecast for 2020. We've got the budget for 21, 22, and a forecast for 22, 23. So, Janora, why don't you come up to the microphone as we kind of walk our ways through this. I don't know if, I went through and I made some notes, so I do have some questions. Sam worked on this with Angela a lot. So Sam, please, at any point, jump right in if there are any questions. I think we just take them by section. Some of them are pretty straightforward. Some of them we'll have some questions within them. So just start us off on page 26. That was the overview of the numbers.
Yes, you have your revenues and your expenditures. Sam, did you keep my numbers we were working on, or?
No.
Here we go.
But what I have.
Okay. You have the revenues and expenses on your first page, and some of those numbers are in your column 21 are incorrect, and we need to update those.
Just the total on the revenue.
The total on the revenues is incorrect.
Colin, page 26 of the packet.
Thanks.
So where it says 3,575,893
It's 3,317,000.
is 3,317,280. And under expenses on infrastructure projects, you have, wasn't that incorrect, Sam? It
No,
was
that
seven.
was correct. That was correct. That number changed from Thursday when
Okay,
Angela.
so that one's
but
correct.
Her number is correct.
Okay. So those are the only two numbers that need to be changed, correct, Sam?
Just the one, the 3,317,000.
Okay.
Yeah, but then the revenue to expenses, that 381
Yeah,
is wrong.
the delta.
That changes the
444.
381, 395
It changes.
to 122, 782.
Yep. Okay,
And if you turn the page, do y'all have any questions on that or any?
that's just the summary.
Okay. So your next page is,
Just the detail of the
the
revenue.
detail of your revenues. And under that, you have your sales tax revenues and collections, lease for a cell tower, your rental income for 921 Main, interest income, real estate proceeds, miscellaneous income, and any special items.
Just a question on that. You have the real estate proceeds.
Turn on your mic.
Sam, this is probably a question for you, but since we're selling pieces of property in the industrial park, but then we are paying it back or giving it back, do we,
Yeah, it's- the
how
way
do
they-
you account for
The
that?
way they've shown it in this budget is they get revenue when we sell it, and then when we give it back, we have expenses.
Okay,
So you'll see the revenue for all the items in next year's budget, the 1,421,000.
right.
And then you will see that 1,421,000 come back in as expenses in the following year.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Shouldn't there be a li,
We put it in the following year for this budget, so.
shouldn't there be a liability account for those we expect to have to pay back?
I don't know if she would let us do that, no, I don't think so. She's shaking her head, no,
No?
because it's not yeah, it's restricted cash,
Okay.
but there's really not a liability until it's secure.
It's accounting speak.
Accounting speak, I'm sorry, Tracy, are we doing accounting speak now? One of the things I wanted to show people on this one is that we don't have selling the building in the budget. And right now, even though we plan on trying to sell the building, but I wanted to let everybody know that whether we're selling the building or whether we keep the building, the impact on cash is about the same. If you keep the building, we have $75,000 worth of additional cash, which is in the green box at the bottom right there. And if you sell the building, I guessed at about $145,000 worth of cash proceeds.
You pay the loan or you pay the loan off.
Right.
Any other questions on revenue?
And the sales tax number, that actually comes from Tracy. So that links to the rest of the city's budget, I assume. So whatever, if Tracy's assumptions are wrong, the whole city is messed up. No pressure, Tracy.
Tracy tends to be very conservative with her revenues and very conservative with her expenses, and that has allowed her to stay the chief financial officer at the city of Bastrop. So that's really shows itself in the projected 21, because we're seeing a much stronger sales tax than what was originally anticipated a year ago in the middle of COVID-19 and gee, what's going to happen? So.
Move on to the next expense.
Sure. Administrative, page 30, and that's up on the screen. This is pretty straightforward.
Any questions or comments on it?
What we did is we added the shepherd. And we added enough money, what I think is enough money for one shepherd, but from the HR person's perspective, it would be two shepherds.
Really?
I thought her salary, the salary range was really low, what she gave us. It was like $48,000 for a full year.
Without a job description, it's probably kind of
Right.
hard,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I looked at the range of project managers, and it's like 40 to like 120 or 90, so we picked 75 for the average. Okay. And then we had an executive director, a fully staffed unit plus a shepherd for 6 months. We okay on administration?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Operations.
So your operations include your general office, copier, miscellaneous supplies, postage, office technology replacements, upgrades, computers, accessories, and office furniture, your maintenance and repair of existing equipment owned by the EDC. The industrial EDC maintains the entrance, the right-of-way, and other associated maintenance of the business and industrial park. And additional maintenance is provided on an as-needed basis. Building repairs and maintenance, costs associated with monthly office cleaning and other maintenance of the EDC. And then communications, office phones, service plans on mobile phones and tablets. And the EDC also has an agreement with the city of Bastrop, which y'all will probably review during your strategic planning process. Then there's the office lease, which is an annual cost, utilities costs, property insurance, dues and subscriptions and publications includes dues, subscriptions, and publications that further EDC's missions, and these include memberships, dues, software subscriptions, and domain renewals, so your websites. And then professional, under your membership dues, those are like Texas Economic Development Council, Team Texas, and the list of any organizations that you have been members of or want to be members of that promote economic development and offer educational opportunities for the staff and for board members as well. And then you have regional, national associations, local dues, software subscriptions, which include your web hosting, your internet domain renewals, impact data source, and retail lease track. And then publications, you subscribe to Austin Business Journal and Austin American Statesman, the digital version. Then bonds for BEDC's officers and staff, 921 Main Street expenses. Opportunity Austin is a membership, and that's where we receive leads, and they work with us when we have leads for development, job creation.
Ms. Young, and I don't know if it's you or Sam, but on the office lease, what's the current contract and how long does it last? Because I see that it's flat for the next 2 years. Do we have a contract to cover that?
I think we do have a contract for 2 more years, yeah.
Okay.
We have to open it up again.
Thank you.
And then you have marketing and advertising, and that includes travel marketing and training, business development, where we host and participate in economic development events. Also, local advertising and sponsorships, national, regional advertising and marketing, digital advertising and marketing, and special advertising and marketing.
I've got a question about this. In the 2020 and 2021 budget, on local advertising, national, regional advertising, digital advertising, all advertising, we have a really good large budget, but it's projected not to spend, but maybe even half of it, and yet we're doing it again in 21 and 22. So are we simply not spending the money on it, and if so, why?
I don't think we have anybody who can spend the money. Plus, we don't have a management team in place that can actually go out and go spend it, right? But COVID's part of it too.
I mean, I understand COVID, but people are still working without being face-to-face, so, and advertisement and marketing goes on regardless, right?
Well, I think you need direction. Like, I think they were talking about increasing national, regional ads. So I think that requires more direction from either the board or from an executive director of how you're going to spend that money. So that's why we left it the same, pretty much as the original budget for next year, because we're assuming that there's going to be the next executive director is going to want to spend money on advertising.
Oh, I agree with that. I was just curious why
Yeah.
it wasn't spent.
I just don't
really.
think there's anybody been around to actually direct it.
Okay, thank you.
Is Golden Shovel, is that the name, is that in here, or are they a professional service?
Might be a little bit of both.
And where are they in this budget?
That is a great question.
I would have to, I will look and find out.
Where the website,
I know that I saw them.
website services, do you remember breaking that down?
Golden Shovel should be.
But that was an operations.
Ron,
Might be.
a big part of that too is, like, we've purchased no marketing materials in the sense of like cups, pens, we've done no travel. A lot of those really kind of bigger expenses because of COVID. For a year and a half now, we've not done any of that. So, I mean, that's kind of a big part of where that.
It's hard to give away swag on Zoom meetings.
Yeah.
No, I understand. It's just that we have it. Hopefully, we're going to be doing much more of it in the future to get the word out.
Yeah, and again, we also continued the rollover. We talked about the rollover last year for the first time. Money that you hadn't spent in previous years, you could roll over to the next. So we included that in both the 21 and the 23.
Okay, so I don't see Golden Shovel under operations either, but
Software
Software,
subscriptions.
in there. okay.
their
So we haven't
software
gotten to that.
subscription for web hosting and internet domain renewal, and they should be doing that for us.
And that's operations? Mm-hmm. Let me go back. And they don't qualify for that percentage that we're kept to under marketing, or they are, or?
that's a statutory guideline. We cannot exceed that no matter how you break
so-
it up. You have to stay within your,
And they're not considered part of marketing? Or they are? I don't know if you've ever added them in your calculations or not.
Yeah, I don't
Sam,
know
do
the
you
answer.
know?
I don't know
'Cause
the answer to that question. I know that Angela and Cameron went through that and then
All right,
Large
we'll just make a
detail.
note, and we'll go back and check and make sure that when we're doing the budget, that those percentages fit.
any more questions on marketing and advertising? So under professional services, you have, under the first item, that includes environmental, geotechnical, and feasibility studies. Would also include items such as COREX agreement and updated housing studies. You have an audit line item, and it's typically part of the city's audit. The cost there is approximately $4,000. You have legal expenses incurred in the VDC. That obviously falls under legal administrative. Legal project, this code was combined with legal admin 2 years ago. Engineering services are not directly related to a project at the time of service. Contractual service, and this cost is used to pay for contractual work such as the interim executive director's position right now. Any questions there? So then we go to city projects, services, and we contract, or the EDC contracts with the city annually. And the cost to maintain the community entry monuments and Highway 71 right-of-way was not an authorized use of EDC funds. To correct this, the EDC agreed to fund $83,250 towards an eligible project in fiscal year 2018, with an agreed reduction of 20% in subsequent budget years. So this is the final year of budgeting, an amount agreed on in fiscal year 2018. Additional city projects could be budgeted on an as-needed basis, and the city of Bastrop has provided a list of potential projects, which you heard tonight. We have shared services and administrative services. City provides administrative and shared services to the EDC. Those include finance, human resources, and information technology, or IT department. Shared services include recurring and contractual services with the EDC utilizes and receives benefit from, such as maintenance of software shared by the city. And the current agreement expires in September of 2021. And then the Main Street program support, the Bastrop Main Street program has been a partner in supporting the merchants and development of our historic downtown. And y'all have funded them $50,000 to the Main Street program in the past.
I do know that last year, we were really adamant about getting a report back on how those dollars were spent. That's another one we always look at in terms of what portion of that is to marketing. Just, for thought process, lighting for Main Street would probably be something we might think of as opposed to this annual $50,000. We have no idea how that $50,000 is being spent. So we need to really maybe get a report or something from them if you want to pursue it, but
Okay,
it's
the Main
an
Street
unknown.
program generally has a quarterly report that lists all projects that are funded or for a full quarter, and it'll generally list what are public expenditures, what are private expenditures, and what are public-private partnerships. So you see the reinvestment dollars in your downtown. And that's a great, that to me is a great way of reporting and justification of funds that go to the Main Street program. And I assume they're still doing those reports. They're quite detailed.
That's operations. I don't do operations. It's a
Okay.
great conversation for you to have with the city manager.
Okay.
And make sure that the report, it has the information you're looking for.
Okay, those reports are used to determine whether you qualify as a national Main Street city or,
We also, last year, they also came forward, I thought, with a list of what they wanted to spend the money on.
Exactly. I mean, well, they came forward with a larger amount. We took a look at it. We couldn't justify several of the things on it. We really wanted some specificity in how those dollars were being spent, and we wanted updates. And we've never gotten any of that. So
Yeah.
it's just, it's not automatic.
So I
So-
guess if they want money, they should come forward and ask for it and show us what they did with the money.
okay.
Yeah.
So, any other questions, comments on your projects or programs and grants? Special. I had to ask too, special. If it's SPL, it's special, yes.
Okay, we have, in special disaster relief grants, last year we had budgeted to 50,000, we're only projected to 5,500, and yet we're putting it back in the budget again to 50,000. So did any of the COVID relief funds come out of that disaster, or was that a different funding source?
I think,
The city provided
Used three different
126.
sources.
there's supposed to be some sort of fund set up or something that we were gonna contribute to every year. I remember something about that in the
Yes,
budget
but-
cycle last time.
That was discussed. Most of the money all was collaborated through a lot of our marketing travel budget and things that weren't being used. We basically pulled from every resource that we knew we weren't going to use because of the lockdowns. And we pulled those funds, so there was not a single source, there were multiple sources where all that came from. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm just saying that look like we're projecting another 50,000 in the budget for unknown potential disaster relief funds.
So if I were going back to Kevin's point, I think that was the agreed upon, we'd kind of start with that pot of money and let it just sit there and kind of keep it in the budget and add to it if needed, just so it is there in case something ever, happens again. I don't even want to speak about it.
The variant. The variant.
So under infrastructure projects, you, yes,
The $1,321,000 in land grants and rebates, that's the money coming back out from the sales.
so moving on to infrastructure projects, you have the downtown trail expansion, technology, your MLK infrastructure, and Sam, do you have any comments on either one of those, or?
Just shows that the MLK thing just moves out another year. It was $1 million. The BIP technology, MLK infrastructure, moved out to 21, 22.
Bless you.
Okay, so does the Agnes infrastructure, does that not include the city project that we were just earlier talking?
That's correct.
No.
Okay.
That's in addition to what you have listed here, correct?
Yeah. Can I go back to page 43 for just a minute? I'm sorry, I'm just slow. So I'm looking at the SPL redevelopment grants, and what we used to have was the FASA grant program. It was a competitive grant program. I understand moving the money around to cover projects when you're not going to use it. I would certainly like to see still, I mean, we've talked many times about a competitive grant program. I'd like to slot some money for a competitive grant program, whether that is, you know, the seed. We joked about the name of the seed, but, you know, that was, so that seems to have disappeared in everything because I guess we haven't done it. But I'd hate to lose that slot because I think it's something that would really perk up those downtown businesses if they knew there was an opportunity, if there was money to, if we could somehow slot that.
Yes, ma'am. I believe the conversation was really focused in kind of two main corridors, the Chestnut Street corridor to a certain spot, and then also the Main Street corridor to kind of get the program launched. Is that still kind of the idea at this point of looking at maybe those two districts, call them a district, two kind of main corridor reviews to help those businesses first and get the program launched, and we can kind of alter it as we go along? Are you looking at wanting to maybe do facade grants? Do we want to focus things on ADA compliance and maybe fire safety compliance? You know, help us kind of narrow, and we can definitely work through that in the budget workshop, but I just wanted to throw that back out there because that was some of what we talked about.
These are all great ways to improve our buildings for current tenants and future tenants. And that's, why don't you put together those lists? I know we're having a brainstorming session tomorrow, and then we can all do a deep dive on those sorts of things in our strategic planning. I just didn't want it to go.
And I would also, I get questions from businesses that aren't on Main Street, but are a part of the Main Street district and also have facade issues, and you know, some of those buildings need some revisions as well. And we've talked about Loop 150 Chestnut being an overall project. So I realize there's only so much money to go around, but from a competitive bid standpoint, I would like us to also look at our businesses that are not with a Main Street address.
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Particularly if they're part of the Main Street district, which is a very
Yeah, it's
well-defined area.
Yeah.
We can discuss that.
Okay.
We also talked about the incubator concept.
Yeah.
And that kind of has disappeared too. Maybe we should add that back in too.
Great.
Okay, I think we were already way over on 46.
Any questions on infrastructure projects?
I'm sorry, I have to go to 45. I know I am, I'm sorry. And Jean, you can help me out on this one. So the projects, programs, and grants, and I'm looking at the education and workforce, and I'm assuming that the $60,000 is covering our cost of providing a building for ACC. Is that a 12-month? Is that what that is?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is that enough if we need more space for more classes?
So I think that is a little bit more.
Okay.
Just to cover some, because of course our hopes are to grow those programs. I will be honest, I am having a conversation with ACC tomorrow and hope to know a little bit more, so maybe I can answer your question in a little bit more detail tomorrow afternoon.
I just wanted to make, I was looking at that figure and I just wanted to know if that's where that figure came from.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, I'm moving along now.
What page would you like to go to now? Let's go back to 22.
Okay, where are we?
I think we're past infrastructure project now. I think we're on debt service now.
No, we're back in infrastructure.
Are we back in
Yeah,
infrastructure?
infrastructure projects.
Okay.
There's one of the things I'd like to point out is that one of the big infrastructure projects that is not in here is the industrial park. You know, the conversation that we started having Monday with the rest of the road, the rest of the industrial park, putting in the infrastructure for that industrial park. We've you know, it's like Gene and I kind of, it could be 5 million, it could be 8 million. So it's not insignificant, unless you assume that you're not gonna do shovel-ready. You're just gonna have land out there, and you're gonna say, you know, have at it. Enjoy your experience with the city planning department, and go at it and put your own roads in. So I don't think that's what our customers want, or the, you know, people who want to come into Bastrop. They want shovel-ready property. So I think we really need to pony up and figure out how we're going to fund that. So it's the sidewalks, you know, I don't know if the sidewalks are 8 million or not. I'm sure they're not.
So Sam, if that's not in there, then wouldn't it have a major impact on this proposed budget plus next year and the following year?
Well, I don't think you could spend it next year. I don't think you could start doing studies. You could get estimates. I think, you know, there's definitely got to be a project with the EDC and the city to figure out what we're going to do with sections 2 through 6. But I just want to make sure that everybody's aware that infrastructure in that budget, there's nothing for sections 2 through 6 in there. So in my little brain, I go Agnes, which I think is something that, if we were going to spend money, to me, that's where you spend your money. That's probably $2 million. That's in 3 or 4 years. What, Agnes extension? That's, no, it's like 2 years. It's got to be spent in 3 years. Got to be spent by the end of 3 years. So I think we've got that project, and I think we have the industrial park, and I think they're pretty well aligned at the same time frame. So I think we probably have $4 or $5 million worth of cash that we could spend, but it's not unlimited, and maybe we do a revenue or some sort of a bond or something on
We also have
the
380s that
infrastructure.
are paying off as well, right?
Yeah, that's $300,000, $400,000, yeah.
But so I think what I hear you suggesting is that perhaps on the infrastructure projects, we have a line item and call it industrial section 2 through 6.
Yeah.
And even if we only budget $20,000 for a feasibility, something that gives it a line item and keeps it on the radar is what I hear you saying.
And put a note there that, you know, says it could be somewhere
And it may be
between $5 to $8
nothing
million.
in fiscal year '22, or maybe it's feasibility in '22, but something that keeps it on the radar screen for
Yeah.
a definitive decision.
I like that.
Yes, we need a line item
Now we can move forward? Thank you, Sam. I'm taking notes.
No, but yeah, that's easy.
So now you go into debt service. And in 2018, the EDC issued $1.2 million to fund Agnes Extension Infrastructure Project. In 2018, 2019, the EDC entered into a loan agreement with Roscoe State Bank. Some of the debt has been refinanced through the city in order to benefit from the current low interest rates. That would be those bonds where the BEDC piggybacked on the city's debt issuance, and therefore the BEDC's debt is refinanced as part of the city's debt. 2013 was partially refunded, and you have a schedule, if you'll note, it's rather large with an update for you there. In 2020 will be, Series 2020 will be complete in fiscal year 21-22. Series 2017 should be finished by fiscal year 2028-2029. So cash reserve amount of the 2018 bond debt issuance is $108,127.42 for 15 years. The amount left over from the 2013 bond is $283,000. This is the bond the EDC took out for the business park infrastructure and Main Street projects, piggybacking on the city's debt issuance. questions?
And I believe the numbers that we saw tonight have been actually uploaded into the system, right? Angela gave them to Tracy to put in the system. So that we've made that deadline of
Yeah,
at least
I
getting a
believe she did.
preliminary budget into the
She
system.
said that she'd received the updated numbers from Ms. Waldron, so. And then finally, you have a miscellaneous or contingency budget of $25,000 annually to cover any unforeseen expenses. And that, from my understanding, must be approved by you, cannot be spent without approval from the board. So the executive director cannot just randomly spend those dollars.
And we also have a line item where we have to keep that separate for the bond, correct?
25% of the expenses?
So that's,
Yes.
25% of the
Okay.
expenses have to be retained. That's excluding capital and projects.
I think it's also worth, okay, I'm glad thank you, you're going to talk about this, never mind, I'll be quiet. This is page 52,
Yes, and
and I would like the
Mr.
public to
and
know
Mr.
it's
Kier is
inaccurate,
going
and
to
going to be
update you
updated.
on that.
okay.
So we will update that and have it in your hands prior to Monday's meeting.
Good, okay. That's good.
And I would like Charlie's advice on this. It's in the packet. It would be a really good idea for the public to know that we need to either say that it needs update, put in the new one, or pull something out, because somebody's going to look at that and think that the BDC's broke in 2 years. And that is not what we're saying, and we do not need that message out in the general public. So however Mr. Zeck tells us is the correct way to update a posted agenda packet, it's a very good idea for us to do that. Because we're not 200,000 in debt. I believe we're somewhere around between 4 and 5 million to the plus. So that's a significant swing.
So I will make that statement that the final page of the budget was incorrect, and we will update those numbers. And those numbers are incorrect. What appears to be we would be in debt or broke in 2 years is incorrect. It is obviously not that way.
But also that page does not say that. Even being in error, because it's 25% is the limit.
But people who don't have accounting backgrounds will see that there's a big red number on the bottom right-hand corner. That's all I'm just trying to, Joe Q. Citizen, we are financially secure.
Yes, and again, we will update those numbers, and they will be of public record at your workshop on the 26th, which begins at 10 a.m. in this room.
Also, can we do that in a round and on tables on the
Yes,
floor?
ma'am, we'll have it set
Thank
up
you.
that way.
Okay. Board, questions, additions, things you'd like to have slipped into lines that we can talk about further on our strategy meeting? Any more questions for anybody? Trey still in the room?
I would like to publicly thank Sam and Ms. Young and staff for working on the budget. It's always tough to do, and really appreciate the work that went into it. Thank you very much.
And I would like to thank Sam and the staff. I'm still learning. There's much to drink from the fire hydrant in Bastrop, and that's a good thing. And I also want to thank Mr. Job for being here tonight, and Ms. Waldron for providing information for our budget.
And I think she's going to step right up to the mic.
I just had one thing. It looked to me like on the technology that we didn't offset for the bond funds that we're still holding. So EDC only has to budget the difference.
Okay.
So it looked to me like that number could come down by about $300,000.
$1.8 million should be $1.5 million.
Well, if $1.8 million is the full amount, then we have about $3 million in the bond fund that needs to be spent first.
300,000.
I think so. Yeah, not $3 million.
All right, if that's, okay. That's a wrap on the budget workshop, and we're going to go back into open session. and finish up with our agenda items. So let's go to 3.4, receive updates from BEDC staff, joint plannings meetings, various meetings with prospect staff, Capital Area Council of Governments, CAPCOG committee, participation with project committee and communications committee. That's on page 22, and I think, Jean, you're going to do that, or Janora is going to be doing that.
And I'll make this very quick. I wanted to thank the city. Jean and I worked with the city manager and Mr. Job for the planning of the joint meeting, which was held recently. And during those conversations, we came to the conclusion that we need to be meeting regularly as staff from both organizations so that we keep each other updated and know what's going on. And so moving forward, you may see us out eating lunch together, having business meetings together, but those are things that we will continue on a regular basis, and then we will seek guidance from both council and from EDC on when you want to have another meeting. I think y'all decided at least twice a year to have the joint meeting, but to keep the communication open, and we're working diligently to do that. I've attended various meetings with prospects and staff, and I really appreciate Jean's knowledge and Angela for helping me. Also, Mr. Plunkett, Director Plunkett, is continuing to attend the DRC meetings with me, which are very helpful in learning the projects through the city and how we move projects through the city's planning process. So there have been several project meetings that I've attended recently. And also, I was recently appointed to the Capital Area Council of Governments, or CAPCOG, the Economic Development Committee. And it appears that Bastrop has not participated in the past, and Mayor Pro Tem Nelson is the one who brought it to Board Chair Nash's attention, and they asked me if I could possibly, what I thought about it. And I feel like it's a great opportunity for, if nothing else, to network with the other counties in the CAPCOG or in the COG. But it's a great way to learn about the information out there, grants that are through the Council of Governments, and with all the development that is happening in Bastrop as a center of development, it's very important for us to be at the table and have a seat at the table and be informed. So I'm pleased to say that we will be participating in that. We will meet quarterly, and this is all new to me as well. I've worked with councils of governments into other cities, so I think it will be similar to that, but this is a very specialized economic development committee, so I'm looking forward to working with that. And then I've been participating and sitting in and learning on the projects committees and the communications committee on how the EDC functions through working through prospects and with projects. And that's it. Questions for me, or directions or guidance?
Okay, not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you all.
3.5, the public hearing has been canceled, and so we will not be doing that this evening. Do you want to say a word about that or not? There's probably no reason to. Just
that we had canceled the public hearing, and I do want to say that if and when the project does come back, that what the process I would like to see is that would be presented, or anytime we have a prospect or a project, that we present that project. If a hearing is required, that public hearing be posted at that time, so it would be an information update on the project, then hold a public hearing. Once you come out of the public hearing, then it would go before you as an action item for deliberation to either approve or deny. And if it's approved, then it would go before City Council, and the process then would have been that the public had opportunity to speak before it goes to Council for consideration. So that would be the process moving forward.
Okay. Sounds good. I've spoken with Ms. Young and our council and Jean, who's heading up the projects, and we do not need to have an executive session this evening. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
All those approve?
Aye.
Oppose? we're done, and it is 6:20, and it's not raining outside.